hottest players in baseball coming down the stretch.
Bo Bichette, Tim Anderson, one of those shortstops.
Bo Bichette just falls out. Tim
Okay.
Anderson not yet. He caught fire the last couple of games. But the number one player, most hits since the beginning of September, Juan Soto. He's got
Oh wow.
32 hits so far. Number two, Frank Schwindel. Frank
Oh
Schwindel's been on fire. He's batting
sure.
397 for the month so far. Nicky Lopez is
Right.
number
Right.
three, tied with Vlad Guerrero. They both have 30 hits for the month so far. Andrew Benintendi has 29 hits. He's batting 382 for the month of September so far. And then we got a tie with Alcides Escobar, the one you mentioned. But that's what you have. It's very hard to think of Alcides Escobar in the same sentence with Kyle Tucker, Freddie Freeman, Javi Baez, and Luis Robert, which is just crazy. They all have the same amount of hits for the last 3 weeks or since the beginning of September. Alcides Escobar, he's batting 370 in the last week. He has a stolen base, so he can get you some stolen bases, and he only 6% owned in CBS. So if you want a possible steals guy who's actually hitting for average and hitting not just for the last week, but for the month so far, he's a guy to get. Another guy you may want to get is Jesus Sanchez. He's only 34% owned in CBS. He has raised his batting average almost 20 points in the last 3 weeks, and he leads the league in those 3 weeks with 7 homers. He's tied with Austin Hayes, who's also available in a lot of leagues. Jesus Sanchez also has the second most RBIs in that span and the second most runs in that span. So he's available in about 65 or 70% of most leagues. If you can get him and play him the last week, he's on the Marlins, he will play. And another shortstop I want to mention is Freddie Galvis. He's only 17% owned in CBS, and over the last 3 weeks as well, he has 4 homers and batting 309.
I'm going to mention a whole bunch of guys since it's the last week of varying levels of ownership. But just to bring a point, Alcides Escobar, it's an empty average, although he does score a lot of runs. They're batting him in the top of the order. He has 46 runs and 275 at-bats this year, which is very good. Jesus Sanchez, he has 13 homers and 200 at-bats. You cannot ignore him if you need a power bat. That is absolutely a great rate. Here's a couple of other hitters of varying degrees. Hunter Dozier, 35% owned, homer in his last 2 games. Last 2 weeks of the season, batting 333, slugging 810, 5 homers. He has 7 games next week at Cleveland and versus Minnesota, and he qualifies at first, third, and outfield. We talked about multi-positional eligible players. Hunter Dozier does qualify on that. Garrett Hampson is heating up. If you haven't had him, he's 42% owned. So probably in shallow leagues available, not in deep leagues. Check him out. Harrison Bader. At one point, some people were thinking he'd be the next Mike Trout. Last 2 weeks of the season, 304, triple slash, 304, 347, 500. Cardinals are in a pennant race. Good to pick up those guys. Take a look at Harrison Bader, who's a threat to power and steal also. For the Marlins, Lewin Diaz, 6% owned. He's also heating up. His average on September 8th was 108. Now it's at 221. He's batting 283 with 3 homers in that span. Another guy, if you don't see Sanchez on your waiver wire, Diaz is far more available. Take a look. How about Yoshi Tsutsugo? Apparently, you go to the Pirates, you become good. 7% owned. Take a look at him. How about another Pirate, Anthony Alford? Now, this is a pick for stolen bases. He has a lot of stolen base attempts this month. A lot of them caught, but he's trying. If 3% owned, so there's a very good chance he's available. If you are desperate for speed, Anthony Alford could fit you. And finally, in a pennant race, here's a guy it is very underowned. 8%, Edmundo Sosa. He qualifies in the middle infield. He has 6 homers and 2 stolen bases, batting 275 in the last month. He is on the pace for a full season, if he played a full season, of a 15-15 with a decent average. Very useful type player. I'd like to see him play next year because that is an excellent pace for Roto. So Edmundo Sosa, I'd highly recommend picking him up if he's available, and he's available in almost 90% of leagues.
And that last thing you said to keep in mind for next year, a lot of these guys who have a hot September, sometimes they can carry it over to next year. So keep a lot of these names in the back of your mind when you start drafting for next year, because these guys may be undervalued because they haven't had a great full season, but they may gain the confidence in September to do well next year.
Yeah, there will be somebody from the list of players that Ruvain mentioned earlier who's hitting great in September. Somebody from that list is going to be undervalued and be fantastic next year. I'm not going to say everybody, but there is going to be a nice percentage of those people that are going to be in drafts at a bargain that you're going to be able to go and it's from the September hot streak. So at the end of the year, I always download the last 30 days of worth of September, and I take a look. Hey, who do I overlook? And before drafts, I take one last pass through all of, did I forget about this guy? Did I forget about this guy? On the list is, did I forget about anybody who was hot in September? And then I look at them and I analyze them a little bit deeper, and I push some of them up ahead if I think that what they've done the last month of the year is reflective of what they could do, their true base, and I use it for the following year. Pitcher preview. All right, last week. No future two-star pitchers, but there might be just some good starts or good two-star pitchers. Who do you have for this final week of the season, Ruvain?
I don't have any real good. There aren't really any good two-star pitchers that are really available on the waiver wire. I did look through the rest of the starts, and I did find one guy who's standing out there for Seattle, Tyler Anderson. He has one start scheduled on September 31st or October 1st, whatever you want to call it. And he's only 40% owned in CBS. He's got 16 strikeouts in the last 16 innings, and he's playing the LA Angels, and that's in the last 3 starts. He's got also a 3.38 ERA and a win. So if you want a good one-start guy, he's probably available, and he can give you that one good start. Secondly, when it comes to these two-star pitchers, if you look at the list, I would be very cautious picking them because a lot of them may end up not having those two stars, and they may go with a bullpen to second start. So just be aware of that, which is why I would say try to look for some relievers on the waiver wire and just have a possible reliever out there, like Washington's Tanner Rainey, who's just recalled from the minors, and in 3 appearances so far, he's got 6 strikeouts in 2 2/3 innings with a save. Tanner Rainey was a possible closer coming into the season, and he may be gaining the confidence to be the possible closer next year.
So I'll give you a couple of people to think about. Joe Ryan, about 50% owned, 2.45 ERA this month with a .59 WHIP. That is enormous. 25 strikeouts in 22 innings. Like if I just said those are the statistics for a month, guess that, and you can come up with Joe Ryan, right? That is phenomenal. He's rolling. To start this coming week, potentially, Detroit and Kansas City. That is a yes, easily. Unfortunately for me, in Tout Wars, Frank Stampfel has him, played him and got the win the other day, and he has him for next week, so I can't scoop him up there. How about John Lester, 34% owned? Mention him. This month, 2.35 ERA, .88 WHIP, with 3 wins and 4 quality starts. He gets to face Milwaukee, which is not a great hitting team. He just beat them last week. He will not get you a lot of strikeouts, John Lester, at all, but he has a good chance for a win. So, if you want somebody who's not going to crush you, not going to kill your ERA, and you don't care about the strikeouts, you care about the wins, John Lester would fit your roster. How about Brady Singer, 33% owned? He's been up and down this year. He had a good start last week against Cleveland, and a bad start against Minnesota. Before then, he had a great start against the White Sox, so he's bouncing around. He usually doesn't give any clean starts, but he's 2-start this week, potentially Cleveland and Minnesota. Again, if you're desperate for wins, that's worth a gamble. If you're worried about your ERA, don't start Singer. Mitch Keller, 9% owned versus the Cubs on Tuesday. Maybe they bring him back for an appearance on Sunday. Maybe. In his last couple of outings, he's only given up 2 runs. His last outing against the Cubs that he's going to face, no runs in 6 innings. I just consider him, again, if you're desperate. I would not use him if your ratios are tight, but if you need a pitcher to get some wins, I'd consider it. Finally, Paulo Espino of the Nationals, 17% owned, at Colorado this week. Lot of strikeouts. Here is a guy that if you need the strikeouts, I would throw him. 32 strikeouts in his last 27 innings. It's very consistent. In that span, he had a 3 ERA and a 1.19 WHIP. So he's been very good this month. Good strikeouts. You're guaranteed to get the strikeouts. It's Colorado, so he probably will give up some more runs, but he will strike out some more. So, that's the kind of outing you're looking for and a decent chance to win a game. I would go with Espino.
Another thing I want to mention is all these guys we mentioned, take a look at what they've done in the last 3 weeks. See who they play, because a lot of these pitchers we mentioned are playing the same teams over and over again. And if you see they've done well against one of these teams, then that makes the pick all that more easy to make.
Yep. All right, final regular season injury report of the year. Take it away, Ruvain.
Well, I was talking about relievers before. I'm going to talk about relievers again. Devin Williams has been unavailable recently due to a calf injury. He sustained it running while in the outfield. He hasn't pitched since September 18th, and since the Brewers already clinched a spot, it's possible the Brewers will not push him, but they probably don't want him to be rusty either, so he may not pitch that much during the course of next week. Darren Ruff, he's on the IL with a right oblique strain. It was retroactive to September 20th. We don't know how bad it is yet, but Alex Dickerson was just activated off the IL. Will get some playing time, and Wilmer Flores will again see more playing time as the backup at first base. Mike Moustakas, who has been a disappointment this whole season, was placed on the IL with right plantar fasciitis of his right foot, retroactive to September 21st, but based on the severity of that injury, plantar fasciitis, do not expect him back this year. Jason Hayward is on the 7-day concussion list. He's done for the year. Cody Bellinger was placed on the IL with a left rib fracture retro to September 18th. He was set to come back to play in Colorado. So probably a lot of people had him in their starting lineups, even though he had a non-displaced rib fracture, but the pain was too much and they put him on the IL. He can be activated middle of next week, but I don't know if you actually want to do that. So he's a guy you may want to drop. Another reliever who's injured, Garrett Whitlock. He was placed on the IL with pectoral tightness. Manager Alex Cora said the pectoral tightness is not considered serious, and they don't feel he's going to be ready in the next couple of days, so he may be done for the rest of the regular season. It's possible that if they need him toward the end of next week, if it's a playoff run, they may try to activate him and see what they get. Hyunjin Ryu of the Toronto Blue Jays. He's on the IL with a neck strain. He actually woke up with it Saturday morning after his start last Friday. The Jays hope he'll only miss one start, but if he does have to miss more, Ross Stripling could fit in. Gregory Soto, the closer for Detroit, was placed on the IL with a fractured left ring finger. He's done for the year. Other players who are basically done for the year, David Bednar, Blake Snell, Jesse Winker's probably done for the year. Jake McGee may come back, but we don't know. Jacob deGrom and Noah Syndergaard may be activated next week, but you're not going to get that much out of them. Johnny Cueto may come back next week. Dylan Bundy, unlikely to return. Jameson Taillon may return. Connor Joe out. Jake Odorizzi in. He's supposed to start this weekend. Jacob Stallings is trying to be activated next week. Jorge Alfaro is done for the year with a left calf strain. And Justin Upton is out for the year with a low back strain.
You know, the only other thing I didn't mention when we're talking about the strategy of last week is that you should also look about teams who have already clinched playoffs. They may reorganize their rotation. So just be careful. You know, teams like the Dodgers, Giants, although they're trying to win their division, more teams like the White Sox and the Brewers, they're going to reorganize their rotation so that they set up exactly the way they want to. So just be wary that those teams might just pull the plug completely on whatever you see listed as the probable starters. That just might all go completely off the grid. Right? Just watch out for that.
That goes for the Astros also, and that goes for the Rays reorganizing their bullpen, getting it set and ready for the postseason.
Yeah, just be wary about that. All right, so we'll just to do a little bit of housekeeping here to let you guys know what we're going to be up to in the next couple of weeks. And, well, you know, this isn't our last show of the year, so we'll do all our thank yous on a later show. But, you know, it's always a good time to thank the audience for listening. Really, the show is made possible by everyone listening here and enjoying, hopefully, and coming back for another episode every single week. And we really appreciate that you've been doing that, first and foremost.
Yes, thank you very much for listening, and we hope you continue to listen.
Yeah. So we're going to take a week break. There's no pickups to make anyways next week. So we're going to just take a quick week break. We're going to have a wrap-up episode of the season the week after. Then we're going to have our live show from Arizona the week after that. And we'll have another wrap-up, probably a strategy wrap-up episode after that. We'll probably take a couple of weeks off somewhere in November before our coverage of strategy, talking about risk and variance, and talking about how we can do things differently. The final frontier of fantasy baseball, in my opinion, is risk management, and we'll do a lot about that in the off season. Stuff that you just can't get anywhere else. We'll cover you there. So please do stay tuned every single week that we do shows, because there'll be great stuff going on in for next year. You could always pick up advice going in next year, as all our shows are. We do the waiver wire picks for a weekly, but the strategy stuff really is applicable any single week of the year. You can listen back literally to our first episode of the year, and you can get information on what to